Good evening, and welcome to the 10th ordinary
ordinary this year. Just had this conversation.
No, we literally agreed on the exact opposite of what you said. No, we didn't. It's not. No, fine. It's a special meeting of the Literary and Scientific Society, featuring the Godkin Novices Debate on the first day of Christmas. The literary gift to the special meeting of the literary. Yes, so we're going to do things a little bit differently tonight because the acting secretary who are reading the minutes tonight, Mr. Peter Dunn, has to rush off to have his surplus value labour extracted by the man. So he's going to read the minutes and then we're going to do announcements and stuff like that after that. So without further ado, Mr. Peter Dunn.
The ninth ordinary meeting of Literafic took place on the 24th of November 2016 and was attended by 29 members. Private members' business was kicked off by Mr. Jonathan Finley with the pressing issue of the whereabouts of the President Benjamin Murphy. Our Vice President, Mr. Rob Whitehurst, forever diplomat, protected the privacy of our President, evidently aware of the undue attention he was receiving. Watch out, Bennett will paparazzi next. To perhaps more pressing matters, Mr. John McLean, who asked the House an opinion on the idea of cutting corporation tax altogether. Craig Miller was visibly noted to be excited and enthralled by the gentleman's proposition. His reply of "you shouldn't tax assess" was met with multiple sighs of the rest of the House. Mr. Jason Bunting reasoned that companies as well as individuals should contribute to the society of which we are in. Mr. Harry there further discussion by questioning what the tax on profit would actually achieve, while Jason reiterated his earlier comments in rebuttal. Mr. Matthew Sullivan spoke with much alarm regarding the Investigatory Powers Act, which just 2 days ago was ratified into law. The member claimed that the government having the power to dig up your search history violated the privacy of individuals. Mr. Chris Spratt went on to commend first the Lib Dems, not something that happens very often in this House, or in student debating societies across the country, and secondly the SNP for being the only real opposition to the Act, and then went on to suggest that it was the government that should be under investigation for the nature in which the bill was passed. Mr. Jason Bunting also raised concern regarding this matter, claiming that the lack of pressure from the public and the opposition was worrying. Private members' business was concluded on a particularly concerning issue raised by Dr. Craig Miller of a hospital trust disposing of a 20-week-old embryo in a sweep bin, which would usually be used for urine and faeces. A motion was then proposed by John McLean to condemn the NHS actions, but was not passed. Present questions were started with Mr. Jonathan Finley, who asked the acting president what that president had for breakfast that morning. Rob reiterated that he wouldn't be divulging such intimate details of his private life. This level of intrusion is evidently indicative of the status at the present of the oldest society of such an institution brings with it. Con O'Neill articulated, due to the lack of transparency that the acting president was offering the House, the only logical conclusion is that a coup d'etat had been formed, and inquired to whether the president was sleeping with the fishes. Mr. Whitehurst responded that such matters as these should not be divulged to the rest of the House. The House, however, was clearly not willing to let the issue go, with an accusation most insulting and concerning. John McLean asked if the president had shot Harambe. An attempt to finish President's questions was ignored by Mr. Chris Spratt, who proposed that there should be no future mention of the gorilla that was shot most brutally. Before the motion was passed, it was made aware to the House by the member, Mr. Calvin Black, that Harambe indeed died for all of us, and others. A vote was then taken, reading 9 ayes and 14 nays. The President then announced the debate for the week. The short and snappy motion of this House believes Chilcott's legacy must keep the West out of the Middle East. Opening for the proposition was Mr. Jonathan Finley. He asserted that his side of the House were not against the principle of intervention or that denying that Blair had good intentions, but that with his argument, even if we were to take this into account, the motion would still stand due to the details of the Chilcot report. He went on to quote the particularities of the report, and from it extrapolated the need for collective responsibility, and thus the involvement of the cabinet government, which he argued was clearly not the case with Blair's administration. Starting the case for the opposition was Mr. Jason Bunting, not my boyfriend. He started by recognising the destruction which intervention has and can lead to, but that the West should not neglect their duty or shy away from progressive intervention. He stated that intervention shouldn't intend to civilise nations. A predictable and brief mention to Ireland was of course cited, and that it shouldn't be for military or strategic gain, but the promotion of liberal democracy and the humanitarian agenda, which is coupled with this, should be the priority. Continuing the case of the proposition was Mr. Conor O'Neill, who echoed Mr. Finney's remarks that their side of the House were not against interventionism, citing success in France in 1914. He stated that it was important that the House recognised the West had a role in the Middle East, but that the Chilcot inquiry shows the role should change. There are a million reasons why Iraq shouldn't have been invaded, and the West should look at their failings and rethink their strategy. The refugee crisis is a direct result of intervention, he argued. He then quoted Einstein saying that insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results, which he claimed the West would do. The invasion of Iraq broke international law, and with 400,000 civilian deaths, it was urged that the West should learn from their mistakes and not intervene in the Middle East. Second up for the opposition was Mr. John McClean, who stated that interventionism can be achieved through peaceful means, and that the Chilcot report was solely anti-Iraq, rather than anti-intervention as a concept, and didn't give a mandate to invade the Middle East again, and went as far to say that the Chilcot report showed the need for intervention into countries in the Middle East due to the humanitarian issues, which the first speaker of the opposition had already mentioned. With the election of Trump and the mere existence of Vladimir Putin on the world stage, he argued that they could have free reign, and thus interventionism is needed more than ever. He justified that we should not dwell but learn from our mistakes and move forward for positive diplomatic intervention in the Middle East. Concluding for proposition was our tech officer, Chris Spratt. He declared that the West is in crisis and we should take the Chilcot report as a jumping off point. He then claimed that the greatest post-war government was the Blair administration. And with intervention failing under that government, what hope did we have for the future? It was noted that a fair few eyebrows were raised at this remark. He went on to assert that we are facing destabilisation in Europe, where we must look to reflect and protect our core values. Concluding for opposition was Dr. Craig Miller, who said the only real legacy of the report is that it took 7 years to produce, which he claimed was an absolute joke. He argued that the crux of the debate is that we are looking at one of the most disastrous interventions the West has ever made versus the most disastrous non-interventions, such as the Balkans. The Chilcot report lays out a framework for how we should intervene, and that the most important aspect of Iraq's failure was the lack of exit strategy. To prevent this, he argued that intervention shouldn't be a party decision, but a decision of the country, and that both sides of the House have to commit to intervention. Questions were then heard from Jeremy Weaver, Rachel Ireland, Harry Adair and Matthew Sullivan. A vote based on personal opinion on the motion that this House believes Chilcot legacy must keep the West out of the Middle East read 2 ayes, 11 nays and 12 abstentions, and a casting vote was then taken on speakerability, which read 1 aye, 16 nays and 3 abstentions. Thus, the motion was not passed. May I take the minutes to read?
And on with the announcements. First on the agenda is Christmas dinner, which is the Tuesday the 13th of December, so not next Tuesday, but the Tuesday after that. We'll be having it in Kinch Restaurant, which is just on the Dublin Road. Afterwards we'll be heading to the bar yet to be determined. It's being voted on by you on the event page, so if you want to go onto the event page on Facebook and vote for your preferred preference, by all means. Tickets are $23.10, so if you want to talk to anyone on council and preferably pay us either tonight, next Thursday, or if you contact us, any of us personally, we can probably meet you. Yes, and with that, the next item on the agenda is the Trinity IV. I think you have an announcement about that, yeah?
Yes, the Trinity IV is being held on the 27th and 28th of January, so by all means sign up for that. I've left a post in the form for you. Also, Conor Ardle has been kind enough to hold a workshop on the 14th of December, the details of which are out. But make sure you go to that as well and show some solidarity.
Fantastic. Yes, and the main announcement I have this evening is that, alas and alack, for reasons beyond our control, our current treasurer has had to resign from his role. That means that the by-election now has to take place. Basically, the Constitution stipulates that any of our ordinary members can put their names forward for that position, and as long as they have they're seconded by a member of the council will then vote on those candidates at the next council meeting, which will be not next Monday, but the Monday after that, which will be open to everyone. The location will be announced by myself, probably on Facebook next week. Yes, so Treasurer is probably one of the more senior positions in the council. The Constitution stipulates that Treasurer has responsibility for all monetary connections of the society, and they spelt connection with an X, so you know it's quite important. Liaise with the university, RE funds, payment of debts owed, run about that. So if you think you're particularly good with money, if you're a student, then you can be quite good with money. So yes, if you're interested, put your name forward. Have your name. Yes.
Can I just clarify that you do have to be a registered student with the university to run?
Oh yes, thank you for clarifying that for me. I probably should have said that. Yes. So if anyone would be interested in putting yourself forward for that, please email either myself or the secretary at president@litterific.org or secretary@litterific.org. So if you email, just say that you're interested in the role and the name of the council member who's seconded for that role. Yourself? That's where you're going to say? Great. Yes. On to the main. Yes?
Internal meeting next Tuesday. I haven't put your room yet, but I'll look. And don't sign. The spreadsheet's up if you want to start registering your motion ideas for next term. So if you can't actually come to the meeting, it's really good to get everything down so we can have a look at it beforehand. And I've broken it up into different sections this year, so it's each separate sheet is a separate topic, so religion, economics, blah 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 blah. But yeah, I hope to see as many of you there as possible. That's it.
Fantastic. Yeah. Please do come along, because the only reason our turnout is so fantastic this semester is because of the contribution of ordinary members such as yourself. Otherwise it would just be the council and I kind of sitting around in a room trying to come up with comedy motions that aren't quite as funny as we think they are. Yeah. Hilarious! That's sort of testament to the fact. Yes. On to the main item. No, wait, so I have to do president's questions. So, private. Members' business. Does anyone have any private members' business? Yourself, Mr. Sullivan.
Okay, I say this except for last week, basically every time I'd like to propose a motion. This house would, from now until we decide it's no longer necessary, open exactly one of the windows, because only God, it gets so hot in here. Someone else bothers me.
I feel like that's somebody crying out for an unofficial constitutional role of chief opener of the window.
Chief keeper of the swamp.
Would somebody then like to open the window and blind us or something? Thank you very much. Moving swiftly onwards. Yes, yourself, Mr. Cameron. Miss Cameron.
I would like to propose that the previous motion to the House is very flawed and that we should close the windows about 30 minutes into the session.
So we're amending the motion to basically open the windows for an allocated period of time, at which point we will close the said windows again.
30 minutes from now.
This is tenuous. Why am I doing this? Is this about the window? Okay, I'm going to take one of your points, so decide amongst yourselves who gets to talk about the window. Right, you, Mr. Gilmore.
Yeah. May I make another amendment to the motion?
No.
Saying that we should open and close the windows as and when is needed.
Yeah. I'm not going to make that into a full motion really fast because you're all big boys and girls. So, please, somebody open the window if you're not already open. Is one window enough? We need more windows.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Black, do you have any more interesting motions?
Yes, I did. For those of you unaware, the union held some kind of Strictly Come Dancing event. Mr. Andrew Dillon participated. I'd just like to ask him if he'd like to say a few words about it and specifically tell us how he did.
Yes,
He was amazing.
probably moves.
Yeah, what's that? Probably moves. No moves. Yes, we had QEBs, strictly QEB dancing on Tuesday. Me and my partner were performing the salsa. So.
He had his chest out.
What position did you come?
Open the windows. It was a good. It was a good night. We got third in the end. All the members who came and supported me, you know who you are. And if anyone's asking for demonstrations, the answer is no.
If anyone wants a video, I have several.
Mr. Dillon, what's next for your career? Are you going to join the upper echelons of the Labour Party? Or? It's a terrible joke that I regret saying. Yes, so any other private members than yourself, Mr. Spratt?
Chris Spratt, tech officer. I would like to make a motion of thanks to Jeremy for his excellent work while executing the role of treasurer.
We wholeheartedly agree with that. I don't think it needs to be put before the House because I think we're pretty much all in unanimous agreement. So, one more item of private members' business before we go on to President's questions. Yourself, sir.
I would like to propose a motion that spelling connection with an X is the best way. Like it really is. It's got that little world charm.
Opposed. I would like to oppose old world charm. What do you have to say against old world charm?
I believe that we should adhere to modern grammatical norms and therefore spell connection with a C.
Preferably a T as well.
If you so wish.
Yourself,
As a student of linguistics, I should point out that there is no such thing as adhering to the current language with language constantly evolving. In 100 years, you may well spell it X thankfully.
Yourself, Ms. Campbell.
Can't we just abolish all language and just begin Esperanto?
Also, here. I think that means we can all go home then. Also, here. Why not? Sure, right. Right, I'm going to shut this motion down before it gets any more mad than it already has. Moving swiftly onwards to President's questions. Does anyone have any interesting questions they want to ask me? Yourself, Mr. Sullivan.
Would the most esteemed president of this society
The most esteemed.
kindly enlighten us as to what he had for breakfast this morning?
I became really bourgeois again today. I had a bacon brie with cranberry ciabatta from. Yes, sir.
I would say that you're trying to not be bourgeois. It's like people trying to get a contaminant bed.
I mean, it's possible for me to pretend to be working class. Well, the more I think about it, the more no, it's not going to work. No, you've already got a question. Or do you want to?
This is a question, actually.
Fine.
Would the president inform us as to where he was last week?
Where I was last week?
Specifically, Thursday night.
Well, it wasn't. It's not something I'm terribly bothered telling people. It's where I was last week was I have Asperger's syndrome, So I have quite a acute problem with that anxiety as a result of that from time to time. And last week I was lucky enough to take part in a study through Scrabble Children's Centre with young adults. Sort of, it was testing out a device that sort of helps people on the autism spectrum with managing that anxiety. So yeah, I was very happy to be a part of that study, and I hope it's constructive. Good question to end on. So, we'll move on.
That should be a good line.
I thought that you were enjoying some sort of debauch antic while you were gone. And I had to keep
I did that.
True.
I did that. Right, moving swiftly onwards because I'm aware we're quite tight for time, and when I say tight for time, I really want to go to the pub. So yeah, moving on to tonight's debate. This house believes that 2016 is the best time to be alive. This is the Godkin Novice speaking debate. So everyone involved in it, everyone speaking tonight is in their first year of university debating. I should probably tell you who E.L. Godkin is because the name has been thrown about in relation to this debate quite frequently now. So Edwin Lawrence Godkin, the founder of the Esteemed Society, founded the society in 1850. He also then moved to London, studied law, became the war correspondent for the London Evening Standard, covering the Crimean War. He was there at the siege of Sevastopol. He then decided that wasn't quite productive enough, would move to America and found The Nation newspaper, which I probably don't need to say is kind of a big deal. He then became editor-in-chief of the New York Evening Post, being predecessor to the legendary editor-in-chief Horace Greeley. If anyone who's an English student might know who that is. Yes, so throughout his life he demonstrated a very steadfast commitment to independence of thought. So it was sort of the Marie Colvin type character of his time. Resisted quite a lot of pressure from all sides, particularly in his role as editor of the New York Evening Post, to sort of moderate his tone because he was sort of a firebrand who liked to rail against just about everyone at the time. So I can think of no better person to name this debate after. And with that, I would like to get on with starting the debate, I guess. With that, we will start with the first speaker for the proposition, Mr. Shea Glasgow.
El Presidente, members of the House, I stand before you tonight to prove to you something which I think in your hearts and in your collective subconscious you already know, that AD 2016 is the best time to be alive. Indeed, the best year that ever was, and without making any concrete assertions due to the fact we are not equipped to gaze into the future, it may even not only be the best year that ever was, but the best year that ever will be, if we can draw anything from President Trump's climate change and the inevitable heat death of the universe. So, I begin with a metaphor. Imagine you're standing on the edge of a cliff, and in your hand you hold an aptly-sized rock. Ahead of you is potential, an airy space where anything could happen. And you're God, or Zeus, or the Big Bang, or whatever you believe had a hand in the creation of humanity. And you throw the rock, and you see it rise into the air, higher and higher and higher, until it reaches its apex, its highest, brightest, greatest, and best point. And that rock is the rock of human history, and the highest point of its trajectory is 2016. And after 2016, it seems logical that the rock will fall, but again, we cannot really comment on such things, and that is not the focus of our argument tonight. But why do I make this assertion? Why do I claim that 2016 is humanity's best year, the best time to be alive? Well, to learn this, we must turn to the upward trajectory of the rock, that lofty saga that is human history. And the key word here is human, for deciding what is best is a human concept, and so must take a distinctly human dimension. So, let us contrast getting out of bed in 2016 with crawling out of your cave or shelter or whatever poorly hastily constructed domicile our ancestors lived in the ancient past. How does your day proceed? You get up, you have some Cocoa Pops, you have a shower, you go to school, you go to Starbucks, you go home, you spend 3 hours in the toilet looking at memes. You go out, you go to line you get sociously drunk, you get curious as to the phrase, where the phrase the limelight comes from, so you decide to look it up, because in your hands, or whatever meme machine you choose to hold, you literally hold the collective sum of all human knowledge, and it is completely accessible to you at any point. But how does your ancestor's day proceed? He gets up, he hunts for some berries, because that's what he eats. He finds a few berries, looks for some more berries, and oh no, his day's ended because he's been killed by a mammoth. The past is a rough place, and this holds true for any preceding period of time coming up to 2016. Economically, socially, politically, humans had it worse in the past. Up until very recently, basic rights for many groups in society were not granted to them. I think of women who in ancient Athens, that supposedly great flowering of democracy, were confined to the home through the Middle Ages, were largely expected to bake bread and bear children, and who from the Victorian age to the turn of the century were more politically oppressed and more sexually repressed than ever before. What a contrast to 2016, a time where society at large is largely agreed that feminism is a good thing. And I know that there are still key issues to be solved, such as the gender pay gap, but these are nothing compared to what the past was like. It was so much worse. This historical trend isn't just confined to women. Literally every group in society, women, men, Catholic, Protestant, old, young, has been unfairly treated by their fellow man throughout history. No one had the quality of life we have today. History is plagued by war, death. People lived short, brutal, ugly lives. Their greatest concern was survival, was what would get them next, whether the plague would get you, or hunger would get you, or your fellow man would get you, or the Mongol horde would get you. But what are our greatest concerns today? And I talk more specifically on our society. Has Starbucks introduced its red cups this year? The continuing adventures of Harambe, the great prophet of our age, the existential dread felt when a message is seen but not replied to. These are problems which weigh upon our mind in our age, and as I've said, they are nothing compared to what humans had to deal with in the millennia of suffering that came before the year of our Lord 2016. And this is not to diminish the real problems that we have in the world today, for there are real problems in the world today. We think of famine in Africa, we think of continuing war, we think of rights struggles for many minorities which are still ongoing. But this debate, it is unfortunately about a balance, and on balance, these struggles are nothing compared to what our ancestors had to deal with from the moment they climbed out of the primordial sludge until they walked into this room today to debate. I believe the opposition will present a kinder view of history, a history seen through the goggles of nostalgia-tinted lenses, a romanticised vision. But this simply does not square with reality. The reality of the past, as stated before, is that lives in the past were short, brutal, ugly. Economic, social and political marginalisation were the order of the day. Humans could not... yes?
I mean, certainly that's all a matter of perspective. I mean, people of those days probably thought that they were at the zenith of development even then. What makes you think that we're at the zenith now? Certainly we're restricted by our time.
Well, as I stated, we can't see the future. It would be wrong to make futurist arguments because we don't know what the world is going to be like. We can only look at the evidence we have, which is history. And looking at history, I believe that 2016 is the best time to be alive as a human. In respect to those that came before us, in respect to their struggles and to the way they lived, and to the society which they all built for us to live in today, in respect to that, please, I beg the House to recognise that 2016 is the best time to be alive. It does have its problems, but these problems are dated in comparison to the unruly and almost unthinkable Goliath of human suffering throughout history. So please, House, vote for 2016. Vote for the year when we can finally categorically say that we grew out of our infancy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Glasgow. And I call on the first speaker of the opposition, Mr. Matthew Bresson.
First things first, I would like to rebut what the first speaker has just said. He has just said that since 3,000 years ago, life was worse, it must be fantastic in 2016. Yet, well done for proving that, but that's not true. On the idea that in 2016 we have the best quality of life, that is not true. The Quality of Life Index, in fact, gives us a score at the minute of 177 in the UK. Yet in 2015, last year, that was increased to 193. So even last year, by the Quality of Life Index was better than this year. And this trend is also worldwide. 2016 has been dreadful. It has not even been close to the best time to live in. It is so bad. Fidel Castro survived 638 assassination attempts, but did not survive 2016. We lost many great people this year. Muhammad Ali, Terry Wogan, Prince, Harambe, the list goes on. And of course, we saw the death of democracy. While one option won far more votes and was far superior to the other option, they still lost. Of course, one second, of course, I am talking about Buddy McBoatface. The votes of the person that came second. You still have a point?
I do not believe that Buddy McBoatface is a substantive point for trying to define if this is the apex of human history. Seems like a redundant point to me.
The point is, when they put it to a public, basically a referendum, frankly, it was such an important thing, he won 4 times more than the person that came second, and yet the referendum still did not go his way. Ridiculous. Now, in all seriousness, I'm going to talk to you about what you all thought I was actually talking about, politics. Politics in 2016 has been a disaster for both left and right. The left lost the US election to someone with no political experience that bragged about sexual assault and threatened to jail his political opponent. They lost the Brexit vote, which in 3 days' time could turn into losing Austria and Italy from a united Europe. And of course, in this country, the United Kingdom, we saw Labour collapse and attack each other rather than be an effective opposition to the Tory government. I accept.
At least in 2016, do you not agree that we have the chance for politics, whereas at many points in the past, politics simply did not exist? And human beings did not ever have the chance to express themselves politically?
Yes, that is a fair point, maybe 400 or 500 years ago. That is not the same for 1 year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. So I don't see what point you're trying to say. If this is the apex, yet 2015 had a better quality of life than 2016. For the right, especially in 2016, the rise of college campus culture, which blocks out right-wing opinions from university, is a loss for the right wing. Also a loss for the right wing is Donald Trump, a man who stole the Republican Party from actual right-wing politicians, and clearly by what he is saying, as his first few days as president-elect, he has lied to them, the Republican base, in order to win the election. Throughout 2016, we saw the rise of 2 groups, the regressive left, an authoritarian left-wing group, and the alt-right, a white supremacist neo-Nazi group. And the rise of both of these is a loss for left, I reject. For left or right-wing, it is a loss for humanity. In some of the greatest years in history, there has been positive change. In 1928, women won the right to vote. We progressed as a society. In 1969, we went to space. We progressed as a society. In 2015, Ireland and the US legalized gay marriage, and in Saudi Arabia, women voted for the first time. We progressed as a society. In 2016, clearly must be the best time to be alive, as the proposition is trying to state. I must ask, where is this positive change? Maybe in South America, where in Brazil they revolted against their president this year and got replaced by someone who is even more unpopular than the previous president, who has an approval rating of just 28%. Maybe in North America, where the election of Donald Trump has led to more hate crimes, and while racism has been emboldened by his election. Maybe in Europe, where anti-Muslim and anti-immigrant parties are rising throughout the continent. Or in Turkey, where President Erdogan had his own Reichstag fire and used a coup to increase his power and get rid of 60,000 teachers, judges and political opponents. Or how about the Philippines, where they elected Rodrigo Duterte this year? I reject. Who said that he would be proud to do what Hitler did to Jews, to drug dealers and drug addicts, and he plans to kill as many as possible. He also stated today that he would massacre human rights activists if they tried to stop him. And all of this without mentioning the continuing force of ISIS in the Middle East or Boko Haram in Africa. In 2016, we've seen no positive change, deaths everywhere, and the rise of worrying political groups.
On that point,
I accept.
Well, we talked earlier about how, all these other years, it's great, we made all these scientific advancements, we went to the moon, we went to space. Well, there's still been scientific advancements. Just because we haven't made a big breakthrough doesn't mean we haven't progressed a significant way towards the next big breakthrough.
That is a fair point, but the fact of the matter is we do not remember years for being, oh well, we got close, or it helped us get close. We remember years and say they are great years because those are the years in which we broke through, where we gained the moon right, where we went to space, all of this. We remember those years because those are the years in which the thing happened. If you think this is what you call a good year, where death is everywhere, the rise of worrying political groups, and there's no positive change, then frankly, you need to see a therapist. Thank you, and go to position.
Thank you, Mr. Brighton. Speaking secondly now for the proposition, Mr. Conor Nell.
Thank you. Mr. President, comrades of the House, over my own and indeed the next few speeches, this side of the House will successfully present to you the reasons as to why 2016 is the best time to be alive. I will follow on from my fellow comrade when I speak of the 1900s development, which was effectively the biggest change that we've ever witnessed. And I will also be referencing things like global warming, popular culture and politics. We are the last generation to ever actually have a childhood unimpeached by technology. But yet, we are also the first generation that can access and utilise said technologies for our benefit. We here, ladies and gentlemen, are living in the Goldilocks epoch, and we should always remember this as the discussion goes on. Not too cold, not too hot. Insert Leonardo DiCaprio quote about the world ending. Well, I guess I don't have one. But yes, not just the physical hot and the physical cold, but also the metaphorical hot and cold. We are living in the creme de la creme of existence. To my first speaker, he referenced the cavemen, which were terrible days, but he forgot to mention sex, which was every day and wonderful. Not so much the day in their 20s or whatever. Global warming, it doesn't exist, some say. Thanks to 2016, the Earth is now hotter than ever. We've seen in Belfast that daffodils grow twice a year. How beautiful is Botanic Gardens during November? Nice and slowly, just embrace it. Now, in reference to the first speaker and the Global Happiness Index, I said forget the facts. Think about how you feel. Isn't 2016 a great time to be alive? Politics, democracy. This has been the greatest year, not just the greatest in America, but the greatest year ever. We have democracy in Europe, we have democracy in America. This is the first time in... No, it's too easy. This is the first time in years whereby we actually can have the possibility of real change. Should that be good or bad, the idea of having actual political change is great, I say so myself. Popular culture. I feel there's an elephant in the room with regards to my argument. I call it the axis of evil, the nexus of Mordor. It is indeed the SJWs. We on this side agree that these people are to the detriment of society, but like any brilliant idea, with pure compassion, like we see people with mental illnesses, we treat them with respect, we let them have their 5 minutes in the night. And I argue that they should still be on lithium, but we will try for that also. The 1900s. If we look up until the 20s, 1900, 1920, we saw the assembly line, the first woman in Congress, the first traffic lights. A lot of people are happy with that. But we also kind of had like no women's rights, First World War, things like that, not so good. Roll it up to the 40s, we had the roaring 20s, radio, we had penicillin, we had sliced bread. Also, we kind of had World War II and Hillary Clinton. It's contentious as to whether which is worse. But most of all, the detriment during then being prohibition on alcohol. If we rolled up to the 60s, colour TV, Elvis, the late great but we also dropped the bomb. And I just rolled on another 40 years, we got to the noughties, and I'd say that rock and roll and everything else, the drugs, the sex, it's all good. But guess what? 2016 is the culmination of all of these things. These were all the great things that happened, but we've got it all now at our fingertips, in the bedroom, in the bar. It's all good, and we have it all at our fingertips.
On that point?
Yes, please.
If 2016 is a resurgence of all these things, how come America has elected someone who seems to be a bit racist and has a vice president-elect who's actively against gay rights? Surely this is a step backwards?
Well, that's your opinion. Of course, you can voice it like all. But what we have seen is that is just America. We're talking into the global epoch. We're going towards a vision here. I will also reference the first opposition speaker whenever he says, 2015 was better. I think that's kind of like saying, guess my number, and we say, let's say the number's 50, we say 49, he says like 49.001. I feel for 2016, you can't just guess a year behind and say it's better. We've got to think about eras. It's too easy to argue that.
On that point,
sure.
Does the motion to the House not stipulate 2016 and not decades or whatever?
It does, and I agree, but I'm just saying it's an easy argument to make. I still believe that 2016 is the best year. Freedom, equality, all those great things, but it's just an easy argument to make. I think we're being cheated if we keep going down this road. Also, I feel like in recent, we talk about people that we've lost. We lost two great men, and I believe that in this era we need to have a scientific investigation at how a household of Kardashians can completely mince a man's brain. The future is not the past, nor is the past the future. The argument on our side of the house is an empirical one, based on evidence and realism.
On that point,
please.
I seem to recall earlier you said something like, let's disregard how the opposition gave you some evidence, like the Global Happiness Index, which is decreased, and you said to disregard things like that.
Because these are kind of like wishy-washy figures, I would argue. Thank you. The argument that you will hear on this side of the house, is rose-tinted, melancholy, and cherry-picked. Like saying, your ex was the best ever, without mentioning all the whining and the moaning that eventually led to the relationship ending. Reference every relationship that has ever ceased to exist. Everyone always looks back at the past and says the good old days. And this will continue to happen the whole way through the future of our existence. But this does not make it universally true. A wee thought experiment. If you were to ever be so lucky and gifted as to have children in this life, what era would you choose to have them born into? It would of course be this. Unlike the opposition, we on this side of the house can assert that people living now have more freedom, liberty and equality than ever before. We have the greatest ever access to education, material prosperity and the pursuit of happiness. This we know, and this is why our motion must pass. Carpe diem, vote with us. Thank you.
Very much, Mr. Chairman. I have called on the second speaker, the opposition to Killian Forum.
Members of the House, ladies and gentlemen, and very good evening. It's a pleasure to be back debating. It's a pleasure to be partaking in my first debate here for Literific. But it's a pleasure to be partaking in the debate that in years to come, the Literific minutes will be scrutinised by future intellects across the world as they will wonder, was 2016 the best year to be alive? Have we just missed the best year to be alive? Well, of course it won't, as me and my colleagues will continue to outline. The first speaker for the proposition talks about a kinder history. I personally will not be making history kind. I'll be talking about the harsh facts of reality now. I'll be discussing some points for the global wider community, but more importantly taking it back home to Northern Ireland. Seeing we are all standing in Belfast tonight, or sitting. I personally won't be talking about the 2016 political earthquake that hit us, and I'm not talking about bacon, lettuce, tomato. I'm talking about a no-crust white breaded sandwich of bitter spreaded Brexit, crispy La Front National, and a topping of Trump. No. But sticking on food, the price of a Freddo has now gone up to 25 pence. According to the new report from Voucher Cloud, the appropriately titled Freddo Index should just set you back 15 pence. But I think we endure enough foodie talk by listening to the President's breakfast every week. So, moving on to some more potent points. I, for one, am not standing here and saying that 2016 is the worst year to be alive. However, in saying that, 2016 is admittedly looking slightly more dangerous. According to the Global Peace Index, 2016 is due to the deepening conflict in the Middle East, the refugee crisis in North Africa, and increased terrorism mean we are less peaceful now. And we have been getting less peaceful for the last decade. The number of battlefield deaths is 112,000.
On my point.
Go.
It's been proven that there's far less wars in the world at the minute, and there's far less people dying of conflict now than ever.
Well, 112,000, yes, maybe, but we're talking about 2016. Okay, it's fine looking in the past, and I'm not saying we're perfect now, but it's 112,000, and that has rose over the last 10 years. I'm not saying it's nearly as bad as 1945, 1916, or 1348, no, not at all. But 3/4 of those 112,000 battlefield deaths were in Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Horrific if you live in those countries. So, what are some of the worldwide challenges facing us in 2016? Well, our energy. Depending on fossil fuels is bad for the economy, of course, if you're interested in the status quo. And moving on to the environment, between global warming, melting ice caps, forest depletion, species extinctions, and numerous other issues, our environment is changing negatively faster than at any other point in our human history. The scarcity of fresh water
on that point
for consumption, yeah.
The use of renewable energy sources is now much higher than before. The Paris Agreement was just signed intending to tackle climate change. That hasn't actually been repealed. It's not to say it won't. We are doing more now to try and help the environment than ever.
We're doing more now. We're doing more now because we have to, and as simple as that. We have negatively changed now at an exponential rate. We are at a crisis point. The Paris climate is up in the air now because Trump is in president. Moving on to Northern Ireland, and as I said, we are all here in Belfast. Crime. We live in a part of the world in this glorious island that the current threat level for Northern Ireland related terrorism in Northern Ireland is at severe. The second highest threat level. No, I'm not saying that we haven't moved out of the troubles, and I'm not saying we haven't progressed. But now 12 months ago, PSNI Chief Constable George Hamilton said that the IRA Army Council still exists in Sinn Féin's political strategy. Northern Ireland Secretary Teresa Village reported 27 paramilitary-style attacks up until August. Go ahead.
Yeah, that being said though, Northern Ireland and Belfast specifically is still one of the safest cities in the UK. So, like, surely that's indicative of, like, how bad the rest of the country is. I'm really helping you on.
Thank you. And on that point, we see paramilitary-style attacks not getting the death of prison officer Adrian Ismay, who died on 4th of March this year. General criminality has rose according to the PSNI trends in police reported crime in Northern Ireland. Crime has rose over the last 2 years from under 103,000 in 2014-15 to 105,000 in 2014-15. No. Liberties, we've heard much talk from the proposition about our liberties. We have a First Minister and the leader of the largest political party in Northern Ireland who said in an interview with the newsletter that in every free vote, DUP MLAs would vote against gay marriage and abortion. What a progressive paradise.
On that point?
No. The proclamations state we are living longer, we are getting healthier. Of course we are, research grows. But we have a struggling NHS. Evidently, when it was published in the McGo report that in 10 years' time, 90% of our executive budget will be spent on health. Northern Ireland A&E waiting times have systematically increased to 28% of those will spend 5 hours or more in... No. This is the worst performing area of the UK. If I take the example of the inspector's report published this week, finding staffing levels at Alton Govern's A&E Hospital were inadequate at busy times.
Right, sir. Yeah, that's all well and good, but that is Northern Ireland in particular specifically. I mean, this is about a year and therefore all-encompassing. So it's very specific, but could you broaden your argument?
Why not bring Northern Ireland? It's all fine and well talking about the world and America, but the health, the NHS, ambulance, A&E, they have all negatively changed in 2016. All things that affect us. Segregation, we still have segregated communities. Segregated education, we still have peace walls in Northern Ireland.
Yeah,
we continue to live in a society we identify each other by colours, flags, religion, names, where we come from and what we believe in. Nothing has changed much over the last couple of years, and if nothing, has decreased this year. But it's not all doom and gloom in Northern Ireland. In 2016, we did see the end of the Save Our Flag, We'll March Anywhere to Adele protest, of course, leaving us with 22 million of a cost. Thank you.
We now call upon the third speaker in the proposition this evening, which is Hugh Dodger.
Alright, now, I would like to begin by addressing the point of democracy. Something that's come up a lot tonight, talking about democracy in here, about Brexit, democracy in America, about Trump. The lack of democracy in Turkey in relation to its coup, but the whole issue if democracy ever existed in Cuba, this is something I want to open by addressing now. The fact is, I recognise we have a lot of liberals in the room, alright, I get it. We don't like Trump. Most of us, I don't like Trump, alright? A lot, Brexit, probably more divided. If you like it or not, I don't know. And personally, I probably don't care either. But the point is, it represents democracy. Democracy being a fundamental principle of what our countries represent. Alright? And whether or not you agree, you have to respect that. That's not a point for how terrible a year this is, because this is simply people exerting their opinion, which is never a bad thing. And expanding on this point, this represents real democracy. Alright?
On that point,
you go.
Like, we've had an election this year where I'm not going to go on about it, but Hillary Clinton got over 2 million more votes than the person who's actually president. So where is the democracy in that?
It's the Electoral College. It is part of the American system. It is not something we are capable of changing. It is also not something that ever has been changed and therefore is irrelevant in determining if any year has been better than 2016. Now, going further into this point, what happened this year represents real democracy. We can look at the years prior, the early 2000s or 2010s, as you said, was so wonderful. These were determined by the ineptitudes of George W. Bush, the ineptitudes of David Cameron, the complete apathy that we saw with Gordon Brown, Yes?
The member continues to talk about democracy in America. How about we bring it back in Northern Ireland again, where we have legislation brought to the House in the Assembly, and we have one party being able to veto that, even though the rest of the House wants to put that motion forward. That's democracy in action.
What year was better? I'm sorry, this is about 2016. Can you name a year whenever we better represented gay rights in Northern Ireland? I certainly can't remember it. Before 1998, there was no democracy here whatsoever. And post-1998, we had a few years of an awful executive. We've only had stable government. This was the first year where a gay marriage bill passed in Stormont. This is literally the best year for that sort of thing in Northern Ireland. That point is completely moot. The petition of concern is bad, sure, but there's no point it wasn't there. The impetus for tonight is that this is the best year. From a Northern Irish context, there was no year where there was both democracy in Northern Ireland and a year where the petition of concern didn't exist. From a Northern Irish, yes?
And on that point, yet we see the democratic will of the Northern Irish people ignored, forced out of that blessed European Union. For shame, sir. For shame.
No. The point is, this is what I want to address here. The reason that the European Union ended up the way it was because, as I was getting on before being bombarded here, the point was that it was the ineptitudes of David Cameron. His legislation for the EU referendum was crap. It outlined no systems and no one challenged it. Where was Peter Robinson or Martin McGuinness when that was passing? Hold on here. We are. The democracy we saw in 2016 was real democracy. It was people rising up. I don't like that people voted for Trump, but it was people saying, you know what, things have been too stagnant here for far too long. And that is the truth. It is the same in the EU. No, the same in the EU vote for Britain. For decades, people were so tired of a, I hate saying this because it is so redundant right now, ruling political elite or whatever. But the point is they were saying that we were subjugated by them for far too long, and so they rose up. And we need to look at what that represents for the future, real democracy coming back into it again. I think that's far better than, Blairites or whatever the hell George W. Bush was, for most of this century. And that is the main point that we have to look at here. Now, we look again at the issue of global terrorism, alright? Probably one of, if not the biggest issues in the world today, but it's not exactly, it hasn't gotten as worse. As my teammate rightly pointed out, there's less wars in the world today than almost any other point in history. The Western media is reporting a lot on Syria, a lot on those groups, because those are the groups that they are actively fighting. The world as a whole is not globally more unstable. There are just as many people dying as there was now, and what we see here, the point is that it's not like the world is any worse as a result of these things. Alright? It's not that these things are more prevalent, the fact is that's just selectively what our medias are trying to present. Now, the point is that these indexes, alright, we've heard a lot about equality indexes and happiness indexes, trying to quantify the people. This is not what it's about. It's not about organisations saying what's right. It's not about governments saying what's right. It's about the people as a collective. And from that standpoint, I think that's where 2016 succeeds. People are together, not on the global scale, but at a local level. We do not determine decades or eras. Well, we do in a sense, but it is about the ordinary people. And I do believe that to a certain extent that yes, this is where 2016 succeeds. We had mentioned the rising prices in Freddos, in the economy. The economy is going into issues, yes, but I believe 2016 still represents the best era for these things, because we need to look outside of that. The economy, it's an issue, but look at, I'm surprised I didn't mention more, medicine. We can cure more diseases now than we could at any other point in history. There are more films to watch now than any other point in history. Books, everything. We are the most culturally enhanced people who've ever lived. We can look at the issue of 2016 as us standing on the coast of our destiny, the precipice of the future. You present it as if there are two options. We either lie prostrate, let the tides of the future wash over us, completely wipe us away. Or you say we retreat into the past, say what's comfortable, even though it's flawed, that's what's best for us. I say that we have a third option. We stand up, galvanise ourselves against the tides of change, and we steer it in the course that we want to take it. That is the main issue which is being presented here tonight, and that's what we need to move forward with. 2016, with its political revolutions, with its increased consciousness among the people, is the best chance, the best year of any decade, of any century, for us to do that. And that is why, absolutely, 2016 is the best year to be alive. Thank you.
We now call upon the third speaker of the opposition, Mr. John McLean.
Mr. President and members of the House, the third speaker talked a lot about democracy, but never has it been under such a threat as when the UK voted to leave the EU and established politicians are now saying that the people don't know what they're voting for. No less, a peer said, 2016 has had some interesting highlights, such as Brexit, but they don't make 2016 the best year to be alive. In fact, they just further more reasons to to hate this year even more. Whether it was the death of the great David Bowie, Alan Rickman, or the greater still Harambe,
yes,
we can't call it the best year to be alive when such great people are dying. Whether it was the uncovering of the corruption in the English football team management, or their embarrassing exit from the European Championship. Thank you, Iceland. Perhaps the worst part of 2016 is that hate crime has never been higher after it soared 41%. Never has terrorism been so rampant in the West. The first duty of government is to protect its citizens, and never has this duty been under such question as 2016. An out-of-touch Labour Party, acting as a credible opposition, cannot be effective against the government, whose leader cannot differentiate between the IMF and the IFS, as we saw on Wednesday. With opinion polls as high as 47 to 28, unheard of for an opposition party at this time of the election, can we ever say that the government has ever been properly made accountable as 2016? It has been way better. And how about the assassination of a politician, another threat to our democracy? On June 16th, Joe Cox died from a far-right terrorist. How can we call it the best year to be alive when we have homegrown terrorists killing our elected politicians?
On that point,
yes.
Speaking from Northern Ireland context, as you love to do, we have a lot less homegrown politicians being killed by homegrown terrorists than ever before.
Yeah. Did that happen in 2015? 2014 did elected politicians by people, their constituencies, a member of the constituency, rise up and kill them. I don't think what, sorry?
Not that we have back and forth.
Okay. Donald Trump, the alt-right has never been stronger, with those using the Brexit vote as a vote for racism, and Donald Trump's election as a signal that it's okay to be racist.
On that point?
No. The US nuclear codes will soon be given to a racist bigot, a man who doesn't even understand why the US cannot use its nuclear capacity.
On that point?
No. A man seeking to build a wall between its neighbours and instead of building bridges.
On that point?
A man pushing for the dismantling of future trade deals, putting into question the future of globalisation. How can we call the best year to be alive when our futures are being put into question right now? Yes.
And you say that Trump is doing all this bad stuff, but still, 53 million people voted for him?
He is going to be the president of the United States of America. It doesn't really matter how many people voted for him, but he is going to be doing all this. On personal finances, our finances have never been worse. Summer holidays abroad have never been so expensive, thanks to the Brexit vote, with the pound at record lows. Economic forecasts have been halved, and we have never had such an uncertain future. Although I believe that Brexit will make us all better off in the long run, it surely isn't good now when we are feeling the current short-term costs. Fears of recession are looming, with many people believing that China's banking system will collapse soon. And back to the summer of hate, where in France alone, over the past year and a half, the number of reported deaths through terrorism has been nearly 250 people. Whether it was the murder of an 85-year-old priest or the Nice massacre. Let's look at Germany, where there have been an axe attack, a shooting spree by a teenager, or the suicide bombing where a Syrian asylum seeker injured 12 people. Or let's look further into the world, where we have the Zika virus that is absolutely devastating Brazil, where they are currently threat level 2, just before the Rio Olympic Games. Or do we want to look at the civil wars in the Middle East, with so many people dying every day? Or police officers, whether or not you agree with the circumstances, have been killing civilians, and civilians openly attacking officers in America. The Dallas shootings, where 5 officers were killed, 7 injured, and 2 members of the public injured. Or the Orlando shooting, sorry, no, I'm going to continue on that a second later. Let's talk about the Orlando shooting, where a 29-year-old security guard kills 49 people in a gay nightclub and injured 53 people. How can 2016 be a good year when the very right of being yourself is under attack? or expressing yourself has led to death? Yes.
Again, you speak of crisis in Europe and stuff. Well, that is what Brexit is about. For us personally, we actually get the chance to defend ourselves. Secondly, law and order in the US is a problem also. And guess what? President-elect Trump, that was the one thing he was going to deal with, law and order problems. So things are going to potentially get better due to legislation and due to people being elected.
By allowing people to have more guns, by scrapping the laws against people gun ownership, by letting people that are convicted of crimes having guns. If you support this item, now in conclusion, now I do hope that the future may be seen in hindsight, this may be seen in hindsight as the start of many great things, but a year where we pay the short-term cost of our actions for long-term gains. Let's not pretend like it's good now. 2016 is more of a transition year, a filler year. But looking at it right now, can we truly say that anything is good in this year? Nothing good has happened, yet it may lay the foundations for a good future. For us young people looking for a bright future, this year has been very well for us. Nothing spectacular or great has happened, nothing groundbreaking. Therefore, it cannot be the best year to be alive. And I urge you to vote against the motion tonight and pick up the pieces in 2017.
Thank you, John. We now welcome the final speaker for the opposition, closing the debate, Ms. Ciara Campbell.
Do you know why children cry all the time? It's because their lives have been so short that everything that happens to them is the worst thing that has ever happened. The opposition are the sin. Their lives have been so short that they can remember all the span of human history and all the things that have happened. And that is why I'm going to set out today some rebuttal to their arguments. First of all, Matthew and John, you both talked about people dying. Matthew, you focused more on how everyone was dying. It was famous, for example. Well, that might just be because they're getting old, you know? And John, you talked about all the atrocities that happened this year. But I would like to note that people die all the time. People die every year. And I would like to say that, you know, at least we haven't had any massive atrocities this year, such as the Rwandan genocide, where the international community stood by and did nothing. No. And I would just like to lead into my second point against you, Matthew. Years are not defined by progress, or how much we progress in 1 year. Generally, we let the years go by without really thinking about what has happened. But we do define years by what giant events have happened in those years. For example, 1914, World War I breaks out. 1933, Hitler becomes Chancellor. And 2014, annexation of Crimea. You can almost say that was just as big as 2016, but nothing like that has happened in 2016.
Point of information.
No. And then, I would just like to talk to you about climate change, Killian. You're exactly right. Climate change is going to happen. And that's why 2016 is the best. Because we still have animals, we still have the ice caps, and we still have coral reefs. And you can still see all those things
On that
while you
point of
can.
information, please.
Okay, Killian, go ahead.
The whole point of my speech is that it was negatively changing. It's exponentially negatively changing at this point. We have now gone...
Okay, I have your points, that's okay. Because, just like Shay said, we are the apex of humanity. I'm not going to say anything about the future, as he said, but we are the high point right now. So let's not think about how we're going to fall. No. Okay. And just as Shay and Colin were saying, we do have a lot of technology. We are the millennial generation. The people who, literally they say that our brains can't hold as much memory because our memory is in our phones. And I think we're seeing final effects of technology upon our generation, specifically in the internet. Gamergate 2014, and all the resulting things that have happened because of it. It has changed our society
On
and
that
our
point-
politics. Oh yeah, sure.
So you brought up Gamergate as a positive example of something that happened in the past. However, now we are seeing the toxicity resulting from that building itself into the
I have
real
a
world.
point.
No, you don't. We are seeing that embed itself in our politics.
Yeah, no, okay. You see, all these things are happening, but our politics is changing, Matthew. The people used to say democracy was mob rule. They didn't like democracy. My point is that we may be seeing all the liberal democracies of the world crumble. The consensus that has changed the modern world is ripping and it's falling down to the populace and the far right, such as Brexit and Trump. But that is one of the reasons why 2016 is the best time to be alive. Because as Colin said, it's real political change. You know, when you look at it from the perspective of the populists, they're finally gaining power. Maybe half of the Western world, the one here, is horrified, but the other half finally has hope. They are going to get their way. This is democracy in action, as you said. I know, and they're going to get their way, and they don't like your values. They want a different way. For example, as Marine Le Pen has said, her most senior strategist, their world is collapsing, and ours is being built. There's a new world starting, and it may be different, and it may be ones we don't exactly agree with, but it is changing. Yeah.
Do you really think that you should use Marine Le Pen as an example of why 2016 is the best year of your life? She's ambitious racist and she's quite unimpressive.
This is why it's kind of controversial, because as Hugh was saying, everyone here is and does hold liberal values, but the future world that is coming may not. And okay, I'm not going to say I espouse those values, I don't, but a lot of people don't either. And the people who voted for Trump, and the people who voted for Trump and then Brexit don't, and they're the ones who are deciding the future. We stand on the knife edge of history. Everything we conceptualize as normal hangs in a balance in 2016. And this is why it's the most interesting time to be alive. We are living history as it happens. The world is changing around us. 2016 could change our world forever. Because you can't deny that 50 years from now, if we are around 50 years from now, people will ask you, so what was 2016 like? What was it like to live in 2016, to live through it, to see all these changes that have been happening? And that is why we should be grateful that we have lived through 2016. We should be grateful that we have been alive to see it. And that is why 2016 is the best time to be alive.
Thank you very much, Karen. I call upon the final stage of the competition to conclude the development of debate, Mr. Matthew Bradley.
2016! What a disgrace! What an absolute disgrace 2016 is. Now, the propositioners seeming to make out that 2016 is the very best, like no year ever was. But we would disagree. And even though we may be comparative fetuses in the eyes of the very old opposition that can remember all these years back, we are old enough to remember that 2015 was a lot better than this. 2015 was lovely. We thought that 2016 was bad in January when David Bowie and Alan Rickman died. We thought it was bad then. We were incredibly naive. Things could only get worse. Since then, we've experienced the deaths of Prince, Ronnie Corbett, Victoria Wood, Sir Terry Wogan, Gene Wilder, Lemmy from Motorhead, Kenny Baker, Anton Yelchin, Muhammad Ali, Leonard Cohen, Harper Lee, and a gorilla that I won't mention until the end. I accept. Oh, I don't accept at the moment. The news was relentlessly depressing. Toblerone has diminished in size, yet it's still the same price. The BBC lost the bake-off, yes.
I think as evidence of the last speaker, we see that there's a lack of quality in the argument, that they assert that diagonally somehow against human nature, just like the sun rising in the east. It's going to happen, get over it.
Yes, everyone dies, but we didn't want them to die now. There is a time to die, and the time for them to die was not now. There's so much more to give, but that was at the risk of becoming very cheesy. Where was I? Yes, killer clowns roamed our streets, and worst of all, Rick Astley started making music again. I accept, although I'm very worried.
Okay, but Ashley is actually a good musician.
Mr. President, members of the House, I've been on the internet long enough to just feel sick of Britain and want that trend to end, but sadly, that cannot happen. Yes, these may seem to be first world problems, but they help provide 2016 with an air of, well, how would you say, melancholy dread that we haven't quite experienced in the world of pop culture. Now, I'm not saying 2016 has been railroad spikes in the eyes and doused myself with petrol bad, but it definitely hasn't been that great. The first speaker of the proposition was talking about a rock and how it's reached its height. If 2016 is a rock at all, it is the rock that chased Indiana Jones. And we've mentioned the happiness thing, and as we're living in the modern world, we want to know people's opinions. How are people feeling about 2016? And the most modern way we can do that is via Twitter. The hashtag 2016 in 3 words was trending in July, and what were the results? Inspiring, magnificent, lovely. No. Professor Snape at _Snape_ simply said, worst year ever. At Miss Patrick 7 said, be very afraid, whereas Isabel LLLLLL stated she was yearning for death. Comedian Cyprus John Oliver echoed the sentiment, saying, even though this year still has 7 weeks left, I'm calling it early. 2016 has been the worst. Surely this mass display of annoyance shows that 2016 is different. I accept.
Annoyance on Twitter in the 21st century is surely not substantive enough to try and propagate that this is the worst year of human history.
I think you sort of said it yourself, this is the 21st century, we don't go and talk to people in the streets anymore. I don't really talk to people much nowadays. We use Twitter, we use social media, that is the way the world works. If you want to make your opinion public, you use the internet. And people seem to be blaming the year for this. It's a trend that's happening. 2016 isn't unlucky, it's just that loads of really unfavourable events have just occurred in the past 366 days. Oh, yes, 366. This was a leap year, so the suffering was prolonged. Quite frankly, so many bad things have happened in the last 11 months, I actually forgot some of them did. The Zika outbreak, the Bastille Day terrorist attack in Nice, the murder of Joe Cocker, loads of things happened and you can't even list them off the top of your head. On top of that, we're the first US president ever to have his own board game and want to build a border with Mexico, over some of which is mountainous. The wave of hate crimes that spread across America after Donald Trump's election was truly shocking, and it's not the election itself, but the results of it that are shocking me at the moment. And close to home, it has been reported that hate crimes soared 41% after the Brexit vote. Surely 2016 is not the best time to be alive for all people, as the progress we have made in equality has been diminished. Now, the proposition has brought up the world of culture, and I've mentioned Bake Off, but they seem to be under the illusion that more films and TV make the world a better place, whereas they haven't really brought into account quality. We brought into the fact that the technology is a lot better now. Well, 2016 is the first year, one of the few years I can remember, where it became apparent that your new top-of-the-range smartphone could explode in your pocket, leaving you with like a melting... I'm not even going to talk about that. I'm never going to improvise again. I accept.
Actually, it was due to lithium batteries in Samsung phones being put in incorrectly. Still, you could say it links into the history of exploitation by workers, which has happened for all of human history, not just 2016.
But they exploded this year. But if you look back to 2015, I may seem like a bit of a 2015 fanboy. I recognise it wasn't perfect. But there was so much good stuff. We had The Force Awakens. We had games such as The Witcher 3, Splatoon, and Fallout 4. This year we had a game that people were so disappointed in that they sent the developer death threats over the internet, which is just mad. I accept.
Yeah.
Oh, you're out of time. Lovely. The Great British Bake Off, a cultural institution whose final episode drew in over 14 million viewers, was bought from the BBC by the pesky people at Channel 4, causing presenters Mel and Sue and the nation's grandmother Mary Barry to leave the programme. I would just like to end this briefly with a quotation. 2016 may have been dreadful. I may have depressed you a bit in the past 7 minutes, so I'm going to quote a Christmas song at you. To quote Slade's 1985 Christmas single, Merry Christmas everybody, look to the future now, it's only just begun. Yes, 2016 has been dreadful, but there will be worse years, and there will always be worse. There have been better, but this year wasn't the worst.
Right, I'll hand over to Deliberate, are you?
Yeah.
You can still play the ones you're free.
Thank you, one and all. Thank you for the good debate. Thank you for the Witcher 3 shout out. It's a great game of all time. Thank you very much. Shut up. The judges are now going to be away for about 15-20 minutes deliberating, but in the meantime we can enjoy some questions. So if anyone has any questions for the proposition this evening, those ones who so defended the undefendable in 2016. Anyone? Calvin?
Specifically for the front maybe it was just me, but you seem to be conflating change quite a lot with good change. You kept on saying, yes, look at all this change. The opposition didn't have to argue that this wasn't the worst. What was the worst year? Yeah, all I had to say was that there were, this wasn't the best year. They didn't have to defend this was the worst year, blah, blah, blah. You had to specifically make a point that this was the best year. Just because there has been change doesn't mean it was the best year. And there is such a thing as bad change.
Well, I don't know. I think it was the best year, of our lives so far, as in the most interesting year. But I have to say, I think I've gotten an insight into how Craig Miller feels.
Opposition, about to respond?
I would actually. Yes, so there was a pure contradiction the proposition said, where we had one speaker saying that the election of Trump is great for us democracy. However, Trump isn't in yet, so change isn't in. So that was one of mine. There's one of yours. Is he next to them? Yeah. I'll buy one more. Continue. No, sorry. Any questions for the opposition this evening? Peter Beck, yourself?
I would firstly challenge the opposition. You spoke a lot about different atrocities that have happened. Give us, or demonstrate the House a year where no atrocities have happened. You could name any event in any year that could make the same point. And also, I'm baffled this hasn't been mentioned. Infant mortality, maternal deaths, absolute poverty, healthcare inequality are the lowest that they have ever been at any point in human history. And I don't know why this hasn't been mentioned. Yes, Bowie and Harambe died, but millions of children didn't die. Surely it's better to be alive in a Trump presidency than dead in a non-Trump presidency.
Well, I agree that it's better to be alive than dead at the minute, but what we were trying to say is that when you compared this year to 2015, when the horrific Paris attacks happened, the world stood together and marched in Paris and said, "Je suis Charlie." Yet this year, when horrific terrorist attacks happened, it's just, it's another one. There was one 2 days ago at Ohio State University, but it's another attack that we have seen in 2016. We don't stand together anymore and say this is horrific. We simply say, it's another one. That's why this year is the worst for a terrorist atrocity.
Well, just a bit of just quick on that point, the Ohio State wasn't like a terrorist attack in terms of Friday week and Machete, so you can't compare the two. Once
It's still against terrorism.
Well, once national unity against the foreign influence,
any abstaining points, any points on the motion, any neutral points? Jeremy, yourself?
Yeah, I was just going to say maybe it would have been nice to have one of the speakers in the beginning maybe mentioned or defined the criteria by which good or best was being judged, or how it was going to be argued. I thought that was a little bit missing, and I really liked Kira's point, because although there may be negative changes, Calvin pointed out, the importance of the point I think related to the emphasis that best or good is subjective, and so there may be some people who will view the same change as good and others who will view it as bad. So it would have been nice to have that, and I would like to now just hear how you would like to define that, or how you'd like us to remember sort of what you were trying to argue, in which context.
That was geared towards propositions, so I'll let you guys on.
Well, it just really, the only thing we'll do on our side is we did just mean best, like in general, and honestly I didn't think that the opposition would be so vague in the argument. As I said, I think it's really easy to say like 5,000 years beforehand, one in the better. I think they definitely should have chosen maybe a side as such and say like the 120s or the 60s or something like that. I think it's really easy to say like 5 months ago was like the best time ever. I think I should have maybe picked an actual place where they could have defined their debate.
It's not up to us to define the bit, it's up to the proposition to define the bit. So it's all fine and well. We had a first speaker talk about the evolution, the second speaker no substance whatsoever, and then we continue to go down to a complete rebuttal of points that we were trying to set in stone. I like them.
Never mind, y'all. We will go back round. Proposition, any points? What is the proposition? Chris?
Well, one thing I would like to say is that it may be a good year for some, but one group for whom it most certainly is not a great year to be is young people. We see youth unemployment rife, we see their political opinions consistently in the minority of almost every significant election, and I would like to see the floor debate whether it's good to be a young person.
I said that it's not necessarily being young is a subjective issue, but issues like issues like that are approached from a wide variety of people, whereas the point that I was trying to make, that if we look at things from a much broader scope, we can say, yes, this is bad for young people, but then also this is good for working people, this is good for business owners, this is good for teachers. There are far too many groups to try and quantify things like that in many instances, whereas the things we try to outline, healthcare, things like that, things which are improved in perpetuity, which benefits all those in society, I believe propagates the fact that living now is the best in history.
As someone who buys into the whole youth culture, I think that we do feel somewhat that we need to make a change in the future because the world is so bad now. And in the opening week, when we were constantly being told, your generation is the future, out of those doors, and however so many years will come the next generation of politicians, all I could think was, oh, thank God, someone will make some change.
Questions for opposition? Mark,
first of all, I would like to say to the opposition, in their response to the last point, please don't try and define terrorism on the cuff in a debate. It's impossible. It would be near impossible for your life's work. And also, please don't ignore the fact that atrocities that may happen also happen in the non-Western world. But I would also like, the question I'd like to ask you is, do you think there's anything that can happen in the last month of 2016 which could recover it?
Well, the only thing I would say in Rubik is that they're from Northern Ireland, I think I know what terrorism is.
You handle the first point, do you want to take the second point?
I was like to say, I think that Clinton win might change the tides. No.
Still happens.
No. I think if everybody has
disgusting pandering to the crowd.
I think if everyone has a happy Christmas, I think you'll be a
Christmas now.
Proposition, any response?
Well, tomorrow maybe world peace will be declared universally and there will be no more war. It's not impossible, but 2016 is the only year in history where we have that advantage of not knowing how the year ends. It's very far out. There is nothing to suggest that all the world's problems could not be solved in the next month. And yes, therefore, it is entirely theoretical. But in that case, beyond dispute, 2016 becomes the best year of human history.
Any abstaining points on the motion? Jason,
yeah, I was just going to make a small point where, just in terms of debating a motion like this, it's very hard to talk. I mean, politics is a topic that's hard to stay away from, but it's very hard to say, like, oh, Trump happened, that's obviously terrible, because whatever side you say, if that was good or that was bad, there's always going to be people who are going to celebrate Trump and say that was fantastic and celebrate Brexit, and they have no reasons for doing so. So I just think, obviously, it's hard to stay away from, but you should just be careful with how you approach politics like that.
Can I say I actually agree with that? This is what I think sort of this argument, my argument as well, it's more about sort of quality of life and the duration of life and the access to information and healthcare, the point of access and communication with our other humans, which we have now, which we never had in any other point in history. I think no human would dispute that having access to these things is good, which is why I believe this is the best.
Yes, Trump was elected and Brexit happened, but the effects that we've had of these things this year have been almost overwhelmingly negative. What have we had? We've had hate crimes, we have a divided nation. I don't think anyone will really say that hate crimes are good, unless you like dressing up as a ghost and running around forests with burning crosses.
I'll throw one out there. The prospect of the future was dealt with in a few ways in the debate. It seems to be some cut-off 2016 right now, as in it was taken as the time that we've had out to 2016 is what we have to choose from. And as some perhaps hinted that there could be better times to come, I think the idea of Brexit was peeling off a plaster and it will get better. What is both sides' perception of the future? Will 2016, if you're arguing that, will it be surpassed? Will it get any worse? What is the perception of the future?
It's what I believe we were trying to perceive it is that 2016 may be surpassed in the future, and the fact that we believe that why 2016 is the best time to be alive because it sets the foundation for that change to happen in comparison to what we saw in the previous years, because we've defined that anything like far behind the 2010s is completely unacceptable as being the best time to be alive, but we see that the change that occurred in 2016 sets the stage for being the best time to be alive, and that's why we saw it as such.
Opposition response to that?
Just the idea that we don't know what will happen in the future, but there are two possibilities. One, 2016 will either remain in sort of okay, semi-bad year, or the best year ever, as the proposition is saying, or it will get surpassed, or something will get worse. We just cannot tell, but the fact that we can make a change, our generation can be the one to do things that will make the world a better place, is surely a prospect that we should all welcome.
Go on, it's not. We've got some to go.
I agree. So a lot of people may not view 2016 as the best year, but I think just like any year, I mean, you saw even during like the 80s or whatever, you know, it's all, you always want to be going in that part, like that 45-degree angle towards progress. And yeah, you're going to have a few bite backs, a lot of people might think 2016 days wrong, but I mean, even during the Soviet Union, you had like the Soviet missile crisis and stuff, and Cuban missile crisis. Well, there is like a pattern and like a correlation with that, and we are going one way. So I absolutely believe that every year roughly will be better than the last. The ones I
Sorry, this is literally like directly in response to what you just said, but better for who? Better for Westerners? Like, people all taking extremely Western-centric views on this debate, and like, you think about, and obviously things are getting better generally speaking, supposedly, but there's lots of things that haven't changed at all, like North Korea and X, Y, and Z, you know. Just curious.
Yeah, I agree. But the only thing I would say is these are great umbrella topics, you can never try and micromanage anything. All you can ever do is roughly, generally try and help the potential getting better, which they are. Africa's nearly Dublin's life expectancy, and it's expected to in the next 20 years, massive, like millions of people being saved there. Like, of course there's going to be North Korea, there's going to be Marine Le Pen, how you look at it, but again, you look at everything, education, healthcare, it's all, again, that 45-degree angle of progress.
Position, any thoughts?
Again, it's just a subjective thing, but I agree with the member question. You know, better for Westerners, better for Middle Easterns, better for Americans. It's completely subjective. We're going to take the, you know, it's a bit of a wishy-washy one. 2016 for who?
For me.
Ryan, then we'll go back.
Thank you. Just want to make a point, just in general. Okay, so we were talking about the motion here. The motion is 2016 is the best time to be alive. It's not about being the best year or the worst year, it's about being the best time to be alive. Now, what you brought up, the future and stuff like that, and I think that's pertinent here, because the best time to be alive could be, in terms of Kira's point about change, is that this is the year of possibility. This is the year where we don't know what's going to happen. This is the year we can achieve anything or do anything. You know, the sky's the limit. So in terms of the raw potential, could we say it's the best time to be alive in terms of, well, people have to work harder to change than ever?
I would like to point out that what I'm saying is that this putrid air that hangs about 2016 in general is one of like a cruel catharsis. The problems that we see today are because these are problems that were boiling under the skin of society for the past few decades, and we just didn't realise. And things have and I say finally, things have reached a breaking point now, where groups of people, nations, they have just all these things that we thought were contained, that were fine within society, obviously weren't, and they exploded in 2016. And that's why Ryan's completely right, and that's the point that we made, is that now, this is the year where there is now a chance to steer ourselves in the future that we agree with. Because clearly, everything that we thought we knew about how society functioned throughout the 2000s and the 2010s was in fact false.
I think it's a very good point that we actually had the chance to change, and change our future, but I think it's still late now. With votes have already happened. We're looking at it in the past.
One unpopular vote, it's not too late.
Well, no, Brexit then, we're going to go down that road. But I'm just saying,
still considered the Supreme Court.
It has already happened, so we're looking back at it not as in we can change it. We can't change the past.
Is there a catchy name? Because people who deny Brexit are Bremoners. Is there a catchy one they want Hillary to win?
Hillary's. Hillary's.
Jason, do you want to sign one?
I'm just going to point out that we're not actually not accepting the results, because the results haven't been declared yet. Because if you flip 55,000 votes in Wisconsin, Michigan and Pennsylvania, she wins, and there's really can't go on in all three states right now. So just watch this space.
Point of information. Hillary's already conceded. It's too late.
It's not.
I didn't wish up the can of worms there.
It's never too
Any final points on the debate? Calvin, yourself?
Is this supposed to be for any your side, or supposed to be whatever?
Yeah, it can be. Direct it to wherever you wish.
This just a point for the opposition. I don't really mind if you don't reply to this, because that'd be more interesting. People are pointing the next point that I'll bring up. Anyway, a lot of stuff was said. Yeah, a lot of stuff was said about indexes, absence indexes, blah 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 blah. I think as we've learned from this year, polling isn't worth like that anymore. No, it's not worth the wasted energy. What I'll be more interested in hearing your reply to, lightning round. All of you, everybody, all 8 speakers. This side, best thing that happened this year. That side, worst thing that happened this year. Go!
Star Wars: The Force Awakens.
Last year. Oh my God, the 7th year, right?
My life.
Switching sides.
A massive political kick to the establishment.
Boo.
Cute.
Cute.
Oh, the argument has fallen apart.
Anyone else feel free to jump in.
I left school. I don't have to go to school anymore.
There you go. Okay.
I looks like you'll miss school.
I actually quite like this year. I think it's very interesting, but I think in the future we will look back in time. But I think the best thing about this year is probably between Brexit and The new Harry Potter movie? Has anybody seen it? It's really, really good. Harambe is probably like...
Oh, yeah. Harambe getting shot. One of the best things that happened this year.
Worst thing about come on, you guys.
Probably the election of Rodrigo Duterte.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
Okay. The death of Castro.
You know the worst thing that happened.
The worst tyrants. Definitely
Just the division that our votes have caused. You know, there have been votes in the past, but these two votes have really split people and people got very angry.
Can I get my worst thing?
Of course.
I'll permit it.
Hugo. You seen Hugo?
What?
Hands up in those
Hugo.
Hugo? You managed to avoid this. Hugo is like...
You seem convinced that this is a thing. Maybe it's you staring at Instagram and BuzzFeed all the time. I haven't ever heard it like before you mentioned it.
Hugo is... So my girlfriend is Danish. So we go, right, shop. And Hugo is like a word in Denmark which means like getting together and being like cozy over like fire. And it's a very specific thing. It's just something that you do. And apparently, some absolute genius decided that he would go on all like Good Morning Britain shows and say, lads, Denmark have got it figured out. We sit here and we fucking shit in paper bags. We are living in hell. Whereas in Denmark, they have Hygge, and people are buying, like Daily Mail mums in Middle England are buying it by the shed load, and it's just the biggest pile of wank. Yes, go
We all love the Danish. And just for clarity as to how these things goes, is this compared and is the final line essentially Netflix and chill, and is that why you like it?
It's a strange accusation. Take it from it. It's more the misinterpretation of it. It's like you know, we would have, I don't know, what would equivalent be like going like you'd go to the
Apologising.
No, like you'd go to the pub and watch a football game. So people figure that's like a really good thing. But that would be like, so we go to America and we would say, guys, you have so many problems. Go to the pub and watch Tottenham. You're sorted, and then that'll be it. It's the most irritating thing this year. And people need to be more irritated by it. John, sum us up on this.
I think we should talk about irritating things. There's a terrible thing going on about the mannequin challenge. I think we should all do it. We should all do it just right now.
Do we want to go to a vote on whether we should do it?
I'd just like to say that I'm definitely proof why 2016 isn't bad. This is a direct rebuttal to your point. Because Final Fantasy 15 and The Last Guardian have come out and they're coming out. And we have waited 10 years for this. 10 years!
How long did it take Duke Nukem forever?
No, we don't.
Leave that now.
Rob, what was the best thing? Did you think about this year?
The best thing that happened this year? Yeah, Shinsuke Nakamura winning the NXT Championship.
Revival matches at TakeOver.
Can I rebut that, please?
Her?
Yes.
Sure, yeah.
I would like to propose that, yes, those things happened, but The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild was delayed out of this year to the Great Horizon of 2017!
I'm quite nervy, but I'm lost here.
If you want to talk about, you know, your remastered PS2 games that have stalled and...
Chris, how's the floor?
There's nothing to say, you know, these games have taken quite a long time for good reason because they have stagnated, fragmented, their development processes have collapsed and reformed multiple times, resulting in what are essentially messes of stilted products which aren't suitable for this current gaming population.
Can I?
Calvin, conclude us on the gaming issue.
Throughout this debate, we have said a couple of times that we should not really be considering the future, because it's unfair to consider the future, because we have no idea what's going to happen. But I think that we can all agree that the greatest time to be alive will be when Half-Life 3 comes out. So I think that, yeah, there we go, thank you very much. I think that quite wrong ends gaming chat.
That will never happen.
You're quite right, but still, when it does, it will be the best time ever. Any else?
Wait, Breakfast Wild is open.
On a completely different topic.
Yes. John, I would like to ask for a completely different topic.
I would like to ask the House their opinions on the girl that was cryogenically frozen at the age of 14 for the cancer thing.
Could you provide a bit of context?
She was down at the very form of cancer and she won the legal battle to be cryogenically frozen. And she's cryogenically frozen right now and 200 years will wake her up and she'll either be alive or her mind will be wasted, basically.
Cryogenic freezing. You haven't spoken yet about Farah.
I mean, just how can you possibly even try to cryogenically freeze people when you don't have any clue how to unfreeze people? Surely you need both pieces.
Yeah, it's in the hope 200 years time she'll have
It's just, you just do anything and then hope it works.
So it's a case of she has been frozen and we are freezing her until we have the technology to unfreeze.
I don't know, we need that and we need the cure to her cancer.
That's what.
She's hoping that he can cure her and then unfreeze her and then she'll be alive.
I see.
Cost like 30 something thousand.
Are they done?
There's flat keys.
Shay, do you want to speak on that?
Yeah. I think there was no reason against freezing her. It was her dying wish, and it gave her hope. I actually got cancer myself when I was younger, so I've seen what hope can give to people, and I think if there's any chance that there'll be one less dead child in the world, then we should go for it.
Okay, so I think your access heck, but I'm afraid of change, but I don't really want to, every year I want to be around the possibility of this, because like the kind of worms that pretend of like what this life means just gets scattered, and like I don't think anyone really knows. I think we're about to strive scientifically towards these things, but like as a population, as a human race, I don't know what it's going to do for us in terms of like this one life and what it has to offer.
These millennials freezing themselves. What's next? Gallon.
You raised a good point there whenever you spoke again. I have no issue with the freezing thing, but she's died. That's slightly concerning. They're not going to have to learn how to unfreeze her and her cancer. They're going to be bringing her back to life. That's I don't know if someone's going to say, well, the act of unfreezing her will bring her back to life. But still, she died and then was frozen. She wasn't frozen while alive. So that's definitely a grey area in the headline at least.
She might have no memories or anything.
Ryan?
Or no family or anything.
Right, well, the act of unfreezing is going to bring her back to life because, just to be honest, it's not. She is technically dead. All you're doing is preserving it so you can bring it back. So yeah, I mean that is a valid point. I disagree with your moral qualms. Science comes first. Screw your morals. Let's make a monster. I said it was great. I haven't decided yet. I'll bring popcorn. No, seriously though, the actual science of it is that each organ has its own freezing point and unfreezing point and have to be unfroze a different kind. So it's not a case of just thawing it right. So essentially just melt and just be horrible. Traumatizing people there is. So yeah.
I'm picturing all sorts of That's just the example.
Why don't you get her first?
Chris, sum us up on the
I just wanted to make sure that in my absence when I popped out of the room there, that no one brought up Sly Stallone's magnum opus, Demolition Man. No,
one did.
Right,
no one did.
Good. So we might be able to freeze the criminals. For some reason, that's a punishment. So that might be a good idea in the future.
Well, costume.
You know, sometimes is it cheaper to do that, or is it, you know, keeping a prisoner in prison for 4 million years or however long they're frozen?
When someone's frozen, they are clinically dead in studying cryogenesis, so that is practically capital punishment.
Here.
Is that a bad thing? Yes, it is.
Colin, absolutely fan of the project and have an issue that I want to go on to.
Here we are, miss. What if we freeze Harambe?
You sit down. I have slightly serious, perhaps more resourceful debate to go into. It has been 6 months now since the UK voted to leave the European Union. What are our reflections upon the last 6 months, and how do we think it will play out leading into what we assume will be the Article 50 triggering in March? Matthew.
It actually hasn't been as bad as I thought it would be. On the day when I stayed up at night and I saw the pound dropping, I thought, well, this is it. Business is basically gone. Well, it's hell. We've gone to the fourth level of hell, but it actually hasn't been that bad. There hasn't actually been a massive effect on British business, so I'm not that unhappy with it at the minute.
Look, leaving the EU wasn't good. It was pretty bad, actually. It'll be alright. Everything will be alright in the end. It'll be fine.
Jeremy, go on, please say this.
Can I just point out what you're saying? It hasn't turned out as bad as I thought. We're still in the EU.
Yeah.
So let's get back to me in 2 years.
Jason.
Yeah, it's tough to say because I think during the election campaign, like I started off being very strongly leave, but then I kind of fell victim to all the scaremongering tactics that were going on, saying like it's going to be a disaster. But now I actually think it'll be good. Crack. It's obvious that no one has a clue what they're on about. The plans are a disaster. Don't matter how you solve the notes, but it's just scribbles on a piece of paper. So it'll be good banter. But on a serious note, I do think it'll actually be good for the UK, because that will allow us to take back control of our country.
On the subject of no one knowing what they're doing, there's a film called The Big Short that just saw last week. If you ever want to lose all, very good film. If you ever want to lose all faith in what anyone's doing, watch that film. John.
I'd just like to say that when the Prime Minister predicts World War III, I think the markets will react pretty badly when the Chancellor says all this bad stuff that never happened. The markets will go pretty badly.
We haven't left yet.
Yeah, on the point of not having left, businesses prepare for things. They don't say, oh, we've now left the EU, we're now going to start moving our operations out. They do it in advance. They would have done it already. They want to see our plans for Brexit, and then they're going to make a decision, really. If they had real long-term plans of getting out of the UK just because of the EU, they would have left. Basically, why not? They would have started recruitment, building properly some plans and whatever.
Well,
it's all been a bit common circumstance, really. Like,
sorry.
I'll sit down and
No.
and maybe
Make a final point to sum up the.
Yeah, it's just been a bit common circumstance. Everyone's kind of scaremongers, and it's ended up being like representative of the EU itself. Like the EU is like just bureaucracy. Idealised. They moved from country to country just because of some rule that they decided many years ago, which is completely stupid. And everyone's just got a bit like up in the air about something that they need, like they didn't really need to, like, because no one knows what they're doing. Yeah.
Final thoughts on that from the table? We're talking about Brexit. Colin, up to you.
Like, no matter what happens with Brexit, I think the politicians need to have a serious grip of their lapels, and we're going, and it's going to be hard. Like, the idea that we're going to be in the market or not, like, if Europe in any way cut us a sweet deal, everyone's going to leave. Germany, Lyon, Holland, France are all going to leave. We're not going to get a brilliant deal out of this. It's going to be a hard Brexit. We're going to have to face up to that fact.
David Davis came out today and said that we may have to pay to remain in the single market. And I saw a tweet basically saying that David Davis looks to leave Netflix by paying $74.99 a month to still use their services. Opposition. Final point for us. Very brief. You guys want some order, guys. Final point of the evening.
About 2016 as a whole, I know it's been a very bad year, and also I was getting a little depressed towards the end, thinking about how horrible it's actually been. But we are all still going to be alive enough to start of 2017, so I do think that's a good thing.
We're off 31 days ahead. We'll see how that goes. Thank you very much, everyone, for a fruitful debate.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd just like to thank all the speakers tonight. I hope everyone in the audience would agree that this has been a really entertaining and informative debate. So before I announce the winner, I'd just like to give what me and my fellow judges have considered just both the criteria and general feedback of which I think every speaker can use. First of all, we thought that the style of each speaker varied considerably. However, we think that in general, all speakers needed to make sure that they projected their voice in and made their arguments clear. At certain parts of the debate, people were using hand gestures too much, and that almost was distracting. And other speakers looked down at their notes too much, which meant that their projection suffered considerably due to the fact that they didn't have the whole room engaged. Also, we thought that some speakers were not scanning the room enough. They weren't. Their eyes were just too focused on their notes. Furthermore, we considered that teamwork also varied across the board. This is an academic debate, the roles of each speaker are defined before they enter the room. I think this is something that the First Op did not address the motion enough, and that meant knock-on speakers almost defined it in their own way. At one point it was about how 2016 meant to America, another one it was Northern Ireland, another one it was the working class, the rich. It varied very quickly, and the debate lost its focus. And this is something we consider to be strongest with the last speakers, both of which who addressed the arguments which have been made before, but also other speakers brought in the arguments of their other speakers considerably, and we looked at that favourably. So it was a very hard to come to a decision. We brought in all the criteria, but we do think that Matthew Bradley was the winner of this debate. Big congratulations to him. To all the speakers though, there's a massive amount of talent here, and with some refining and some general bits of feedback, I think every single person here can improve. But overall the performance is outstanding, and we all agreed on that. Come to, whenever we're going to be about here for a bit, we're going to be in the bar, come to any of us. We have considerable feedback, and we've got very constructive feedback, which
most of it's good. Most of
it is good.
Come ask us who's nice.
I know we're not taking names here. it is for your benefit. Anyway, thank you very much, and have a great evening.
very much for that. First of all, I'd just like to thank, because I totally forgot to before we started the competition, to thank the two shadowy figures sitting at the back of the room that Judge Bettel at you all evening. Two former winners of the Godkin. Well, we have one Godkin winner and one different winner. Mr. Harry Dare won different, and Ms. Rosie Watson won the Godkin. So thank you very much.
They just pull us off the street.
Well, also, I'd like to thank you very much for coming in such short notice, because I realised that I asked you both yesterday, so my forward planning and all that. So kudos also to Mr. Matthew Bradley for being the novice winner of the Godkin debate for the 168th session of the Lotterific. With that, we're going to end the debate here for tonight. Next week's motion is this House believes Western capitalism causes disease. It's a bit of a mind problem in and of itself. If anyone's interested in speaking of that, come forward and talk to literally any member of council. Apart from that, go to the pub.